You know, with depending on the size of the group, it gets hard to show some of this detailed stuff. So I'm setting this up. You watching? You in the back, Darius. You guys got to know this stuff. All right. You need to get one of the things you need to get is a metal ruler. All right. Yours does not have to be, this is 3 feet. And I specifically said you should get one with a cork on the back. It's better. Doesn't mar your working surface. Okay. So keep that in mind. You do need a metal one because when you cut, if you cut along a wooden one, you'll be whittling it down into a sculpture. Okay, so that's important to remember. So I'm going to go over a couple of things. I know this is going to seem very elementary, but I like to make sure everybody kind of knows this. How to read a ruler. Because it's important. Maybe you haven't had that opportunity. Your rulers may have inches in millimeters on opposite sides. I'll bring this a little closer. Centimeters, yeah. Well, this one actually is inches on both sides, but yours may have metric and standard on opposite sides. So just be aware of that. Metric is better, but it's not in my brain, so I will be using inches. Okay, just so you know. First thing to know about reading a ruler is to look at the end of your ruler. Sometimes they start right from the edge. Sometimes 0 is actually inset about 1/8 of an inch. Okay? So if you're reading from the exact edge, you're not reading from 0. You're going to be off. Okay? Now when you have, let me see if I can turn this around so you can see it better. So you have obviously the numbers. So if you look at the length of the lines, that's going to give you an idea of what these things mean. So obviously the longest one is the full inch. There's a slightly shorter one in the middle. That is a 1/2 inch. In between the 1/2 inch and the full inch is a slightly shorter one. That's a 1/4 inch. You see where I'm going with this? In between that one, between the 1/4 inch, is a slightly shorter one. That's an 1/8 inch and down to a 1/16 inch. So 1/16 inch has 16 tick marks between 1 and 2. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So if you count the full number of tick marks between 1 and 2, that'll tell you what this thing gets down to in its ruler. Some don't go down to 16th, they only go down to an 1/8. Some go down to a 32nd. We're getting pretty You're going to go from here, 4.5 inches, to there. Okay? So you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to count. You're going to find that half mark. And that will get fairly, you'll get fairly quick on that as you go through it. So that's how to read a ruler. It's pretty straightforward, but if you've never done it, then there you go. So the serial plane project, I asked you guys to get these balsa wood sheets. Or actually, you know what? Before I start class, so that's how to read a ruler. Let's talk about glues. I asked you guys to get 3 different types of glue as well. And there's a reason for that. They are very different in how they work. So I'm going to show you. kind of what the difference is on a couple of different materials here. Do a thicker one too. All right, so the first thing, you might think you'd be able to do everything with it, is hot glue. We're going to be using these, but they are not the best for sort of detailed work, okay? Number one, they're hot, and you can burn your fingers. Question?
The problem with hot glue is that one, it is hot, and two, it is glue.
Yes. So let's say I want to put this little guy here, I want to glue him flat to that. So two planes kind of on top of each other. Hot glue will do it, but it won't be clean. It won't be precise. So, sorry, I'm trying to do this and see what I'm doing. So if I hold this, I've had this thing turned on for a while. I've got it on the high setting. So it is very hot. I can be kind of as precise as I can and really try to get a small line of glue onto the edge of that board and then get down there and hold it down. Now it's going to take a second to dry. So I asked you to get a hot, I suggested you get a hot, high and low hot glue gun because they are, kind of better for different things. It's good to have. So you can see that this held it, right? But if you can see very closely, can you guys see that? It's got, the glue's kind of gooping out of that thing. And these kind of fine connections are really hard to get clean. Got a question? Yeah. Did you have a question?
I think that it has one, but I forgot. I'll wait for him to get it.
Okay. Also, hot glue is pretty brittle. And it really works best on very porous things, okay? It really needs something to grab the fibers of. Remember?
Another question, where do you get a hot glue gun?
You can get them at Michael's, Lowe's, Home Depot, Plaza Art, Amazon, Walmart, any place.
I assume the bookstore doesn't sell them?
I have no idea, honestly.
They do sell hot glue.
They do? There you go. So it's brittle. So it doesn't attach the wood very well together. So you can see I've got that attached. Seems pretty sturdy, but if I just put some pressure on it, it's going to kind of come apart. It's still a little bit soft, otherwise it would kind of snap right off. So it's not the best for this. Now, cardboard would be, we'd have the same problem doing that. It will work to join flat to flat, like that. So if I put some of this in here, sort of press that together. Like that. Okay. Give me 1 second here. So that will work pretty well. The problem you have with this, using the hot glue flat, and it's a little hard to see, but if you're not real careful with it, you can end up with a lot of bulk kind of in that little joint there. So if you're trying to do a lot of real delicate stuff, the hot glue won't, the hot glue adds a little bit of gunk in the middle, right? Because it's got a dimension to it. But what hot glue is good for is something that is fibrous, porous, something you need fast kind of stuff for, like mocking things up. We'll be using some regular cardboard like that later on. Hot glue is going to be great for that. This kind of stuff, other glues will be better. I asked for rubber cement. Rubber cement is perfect for, and this isn't actually rubber cement, it's related to rubber cement. This is called contact cement. It's a little more industrial. And it stinks, so I won't open it. Rubber cement's great for doing this. Rubber cement you're going to need when we get to package design. Okay, because it's great for kind of layering stuff up. It also is repositionable. Okay, so when we get to building kind of folded forms, you're going to want that. I also used rubber cement for this. Contact cement, to put a piece of sandpaper down on that to hold it down. So you can do all sorts of fun stuff with rubber cement. And the other glue I asked for was CA glue, which is basically just super glue, which is pretty useful, especially dealing with this. So there are a lot of fancy CA glues out there. I've got a couple of them to kind of experiment with this semester. I've got a thick one and a medium one, but basic super glue works as well. I like the gel kind, so you need to get some super glue. It's going to be perfect for what I'm going to show you today. All right. Okay. So those are your basic glues, and I'm going to show you how to use the super glue just in a minute. But let's get through some of this other stuff. Cutting. I've been teaching sculpture and 3D design for 20-some years. The most blood I've seen, most student blood I've seen, is in 3D design cutting paper. All right? So, this is important. So, let's try to keep our fingertips on our fingers. I don't mind seeing my own blood so much, but I really hate seeing other people's blood. Makes me a little woozy. So, how do we cut? How do we cut properly? Number one, you want a nice sharp blade. So, you have a choice of getting one of these two knives. This is a basic box cutter, utility knife. This is one that's a little more kind of art useful, but it's a box cutter as well. The nice thing about these is it's a little easier to change the blade, so to speak, because you can just grab a pair of pliers. Sometimes they have a little thing on the end that will break the blade. But I like to just grab a pair of pliers, put it right above that line on the blade, and just snap it off. Now I have a nice sharp blade right there. These little blades, wrap them up in a piece of paper or something and throw them away in the trash can. Okay, don't just toss them in there, they'll cut right through the trash bags. Now I have a nice sharp blade that I can come out with or kind of go in fine with. Okay. On these have trapezoidal blades in there, and you always have to have a screwdriver. Usually have to have a screwdriver to get to them. Some of them you don't, and then you got to take it apart, flip the blade around, or then put it another way. These come in all kinds of different designs, so either one is fine. These ones just a little easier to deal with, and you can get a package of blades for it, look like that. So anytime you can get a nice sharp blade, that's what you want. So how do we cut? I'm just going to give you the basics of cutting first, then I'll show you how to measure and cut a square. And then we'll do some examples on stuff. All right. Number one, this is a cutting surface. That's on your list. If you guys are working at home and you're cutting a bunch of paper, you need one of those. We have some for you to use in here. Pretty random. We live over here. So this is the kind of thing you want to get for yourself. Right? If you're ever going to do any crafting or making, you need one of these. Now, one of the good things about buying your own is students are slobs. These are covered in hot glue and gunk. So if you put a nice piece of paper down here, it's not going to lay flat, and it's probably going to be dirty. Okay. So if you use your own, you can get it clean as you want to keep it. When you're in here, you need to use one of these. You're going to see these tables are not the best, obviously. People have got paint on them. They're kind of rough. They need to be sanded, planed down. But we still want you to use the cutters in here. Okay, the cutting sheets. So we provide them in the room. But once again, they're not always in the best shape. So do use these when you're in here. And if they're in really bad shape, you can find something in the cabinet over there to kind of scrape it down, clean it off a little bit. Now when you're actually cutting, generally you want to cut against the ruler. Okay? So let's say I want to cut a square out of this. Got my pencil, I got my ruler. I'm going to cut a 4-inch square out of this guy. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is set the ruler down. In this case, I know the 0 starts at the end of the ruler, so I can line that up perfectly with the edge of the paper, and I can come with my pencil, nice sharp pencil, put a little tick mark there. Okay? I'm going to go up to the other side of the paper and put a little tick mark there at 4. Okay. Now you might ask yourself why I didn't do it down here. It's a little hard to keep that ruler straight. Okay. So if I'm going along a straight edge, then I know it's straight. Then I can come back this way, line that up, just so I can see my marks. Make a nice line there, like that. Now I can take my ruler, set it on that line, flush with the edge of the cardboard, make a little 4-inch mark there, flush with the edge here, and make a 4-inch tick mark there. Relay my ruler this way and draw that section. So that's my 4-inch square. Now, as things get more complicated, obviously you got to do a little more measurements. You got to make different tick marks, kind of keep track of it. Generally, you want to use, pencil. You're going to be turning these things in, raw cardboard, raw wood. So make it so that you can erase those marks. I didn't require you guys to get an eraser, but if you get separate erasers, like gum or kneaded erasers, they usually are better than the ones on the backs of the pencils. Okay? So don't use a Sharpie for that. You need a nice, crisp, sharp line. And you need something you can deal with later. Now when you're cutting, the general rule of thumb is if you have a clean ruler, you put the ruler on top of the piece you want to keep. Okay? Because if I did it on the other side and I cut along and I came off the ruler, I would cut into the piece I want. Question?
And like to assume that the cuttable is provided by the class or no?
It's on the list for you guys to buy. It's on the material list. There's an Amazon link for it.
No? Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, so cutting, I'm going to set that on top of the piece that I want. I'm going to come line it right up to the line, just so I can just see that line. Now this is kind of the most important part. And the cork-backed rulers will be better for this than the one I have here. This one is a bit slippery, okay, and that you don't want. That other ruler would be better. The next kind of most important part is your grip here. So this is the hardest part. Holding that ruler still and holding it, keeping it from moving, okay? So notice my grip here is I'm kind of all the way across the piece that I'm cutting, and I've got a wide stance from my fingers. As weird as that sounds to say. I'm trying to hold it still, okay, and hold it straight down. I'm also making sure my finger is not dangling over the edge of the ruler, okay? When I cut, I'm going to take my knife, nice sharp blade, I'm going to put it against the ruler outside of the cardboard, just outside, and I'm going to cut. So if this is imagine this is the side of the paper. I'm going to keep my knife close down to the table. I'm not going to try and cut up here like this, because that'll sort of pick at it, and it'll cause it to sort of bounce. So I'm going to keep the knife relatively low, up against there, and I can even lean it just a little bit and then draw that thing across, okay? And if your knife is sharp, it's going to come right across in about two shots. And I'll rotate that around, line it up. A good blade will cut this stuff as clean as it can possibly be. And that's how to kind of measure and cut stuff. Now, getting into the thicker materials takes a little more cutting. Okay? So this one is about twice as thick. This black cardboard is about twice as thick as the brown there. You're going to need more passes. Got that. But it should be nice and clean. If you get a little burr on there, you can take a piece of sandpaper or something and just kind of clean that off. Okay. The wood cuts similarly. This basswood or balsa wood, it's pretty easy to cut. I'm going to make a square, and we'll talk about our thing. So I have 4 inches. It's already at 4 inches, so I'm just going to mark up. Well, you know what? I'm going to go up to 5. I'm going to do 4 by 5. So I'm going to mark it at 5. One thing I didn't point out, it's good, even if you have a square piece of paper or cardboard, if I'm marking up this way, I don't want to then turn the ruler around and count from the other direction. Does that make sense? If something's not square, it really is quick to get you off of that. So it's important to measure from this, go in the same direction. Keep that clean. All right. You don't always have to draw that line either. If you just have one cut, you can do the tick marks. Look at the tick marks on either side, and cut through. With the wood, you might need to make a couple extra passes. Kind of depends on whether you're going with the grain or against the grain. Like that. All right. So I'm going to use that as my base. Kind of start designing my serial plane object. Now this is where some sketch paper would be useful. Okay, so we have sketchbook. You can start to cut little shapes out real quick with your knife, and start to kind of see how they sit together. Try a few different things with the thin paper, and then kind of move up to the wood. But I can start with mine, kind of thinking about what are those shapes that I want to create here. So I'm going to imagine I'm doing an angle like this, kind of oblique, offset from that, and then maybe come up to a point, but at a different spot. That makes sense. It'll make more sense in a minute, I hope. So I'm going to cut. Let's see. I'll start by measuring. There's no single way to do this, by the way. You're going to have to kind of start to figure your way through this. So if I take an angle here and I measure, say, 4 1/4, that's a nice angle. That's not sort of at a 45-degree angle, or it's not too steep. Seems like it'll work for when I want it to work with. So 4 1/4. So I'm going to make a mark on my other sheet at 4 1/4. You got to watch out for these. They tend to blow. All right, I'm going to make a mark here at 4 1/4. And let's see, I'm going to go up. Four and a quarter. I'm going to go ahead and draw that line so I can kind of see what I'm doing. All right. So now I get to kind of describe that shape. So that's my section. Hopefully this will kind of come through in a second. Let's see. I'm going to come up about the thickness of this. I'm figuring this out on the fly, by the way. Let's make a mark sort of. All right, you see that little house shape, kind of offset house shape I've drawn on there? It's a little hard to see it. Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to cut that out. When you're cutting out sort of the small pieces, you don't have to cut the whole thing. I think in this case I am going to cut this long piece here, and then I'll cut the smaller chunks out, just to get started. But I could just kind of cut that one piece out. All right. So now I'm going to cut just the angle out here, and this time I have to start at the point and then come off. So this is a little harder to cut. Now, I said to keep your ruler on top of the piece you're trying to save, but in this case, it's a little easier for me to cut from the point off. So I'm going to violate that rule. These are just guidelines. Hopefully it'll be all right because it's a fairly short cut. There, I got myself a piece. Okay. That would fit. That like that. Yes.
What do we want to cut something around it, or does it have to be straight?
That's a good question. I will go over rounded cuts in a second. Yeah. No, I'm going to try and have that for you here. Trying to keep it relatively as inexpensive as I could. It is useful, but if you're building with the wood and you're doing it here, I'll provide it. If you need it at home, you can buy a couple of bucks at the hardware store. You need some. Okay, so I've got that. So let's think about what I need next. All right. So remember, all these things are slightly. They're varying. They vary as they change. As they go across. Right. So the next piece, I've got to figure out what's the variation. So in this case, I can take this one, set it on there. I can draw out what I've got and then change that. So I would do this in paper first. I'm trying to expedite by kind of doing it live. So I'm going to imagine that, let's see, if I just change the height of this point would sort of follow that line there. But let's say I want that point to sort of change direction a little bit. So I'm going to go for the next one here. I'm going to make it a little shorter. I'm going to move that point over about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to mark that a little shorter, points over a little farther. And you can change kind of any angle on that you want, but the trick is to be consistent as you start to change those shapes. So for this, I'm just going to come in and make it a little shorter and a little bit over on the side, like that. And then cut that out. This will be about the time I cut my finger on the video. As I'm doing this, remember, craft is super important. Part of the challenge of this is to really create something that is deliberate, and repetition is good. All the pieces, are well cut. A lot of your grade depends on those things. Okay, so that's the idea for that. I've got, I'm using the wood for this. I thought you guys would have more of you would have your supplies by now, but I'm actually going to give you a piece of cardstock to get started with. And I will test this in a second, but I'm going to put these on using the super glue here. I'm going to mark this very lightly. So I'm going to set it on there, square with the edge. I'm going to just kind of look to see if I'm upright. I need to make sure that I have that. And I did a very light line on there. Okay? So I'm going to take my, in this case, I'm just going to use this Gorilla Glue. And this is the gel kind. And I'm going to put just a real fine line of glue down there. It's a little hard to see, I'm sure. I'm just showing you how to glue this. It's probably a good idea to get most of your pieces cut first, and then start gluing. And when you're doing super glue or CA glue, don't get it on your fingers. Try and put that right on my line there. And hold it down. It's the fun part of the demo where you get to watch glue dry. There is a trick. I didn't bring any baking soda with me, but if you put baking soda on super glue, it speeds up the setting process. So you can literally take it and sprinkle it on there and then dust it off. All right, I'm going to let that set up. It'll take a minute. The thicker the glue, too, the longer it takes to set up. I'm going to do one on here. We're going to try with this with the super glue on here. We're going to see how that holds. So when I'm talking about craft, you know, I don't expect perfection, but I expect a real attention to detail. Okay? That's what I'm looking for. So you should try to get consistent. I'm also expecting you to get better as you go along through the course at the craft board. Okay? So I'm not a monster, and I expect perfection the very first thing. But I do expect you to improve and to take your time and to really show an attention to detail on that. So this has a little bit of a little bit of stuff kind of coming out there. I can probably clean that up just a little bit. With my knife blade. So that works pretty well with the paper too. So that's kind of how that will look. And so then the next piece will go on like this. You have to kind of think about what the distance is between there. So a closer distance will be easier for the viewer to see the implied form. Too far a distance, it's going to look like they're not going to make that connection. They're not going to visually make that connection in between. Okay? So you try and keep that consistent. You could also try things like varying. So it could be wider. As they get smaller, they could be closer. So you have some room to kind of experiment on this. So let me put this one on too. So these other glues that I gave you on the list, a lot of them have these really fine tips that come with them. We'll pull those out next class and kind of experiment with them. So I'm going to bring that in about 1/4 of an inch to hold that. Yeah, I know it's kind of real finicky work, isn't it? I hope, we're going to get through this a couple of weeks, and then we're going to do some, I hope, using the laser cutter. So somebody asked earlier about digital software. We might get into that a little bit. Hopefully it's okay with that, but it'll be free stuff that you'll be using on your computer. So now we're in this kind of range here. So if we take a look at what we got here, we've got these planes that are going to go this way, angled that way, and then the point is going to move in a different vector, right? And also we're going to have this kind of slope, either up or up and then down. So you might start to ask yourself, kind of, that shape, am I using it to describe that rectangle? Am I going to have I can take these points and change position and make that point sort of curve around and kind of go the other way against the angle. There's all sorts of interesting ways. So somebody asked about cutting a curve. There's no secret to it. I do not have my X-Acto blade with me today, but and we're going to have compass. I didn't tell you guys to buy a compass out there. You guys know what a compass is? We use the draw circle. We have some around. We'll have some here for you to use. But if you find you wanting to use circles in your designs, you should order a compass. You can get one for a couple of bucks. Just one that has a pencil attachment. So let's just make a curve here. You do need to mark it out. Obviously, the tighter the curve, the harder it's going to be to cut. And really, the big thing about cutting a curve is obviously you can't use a ruler. So you're going to have to do it by eye. Okay? So I'm going to kind of take this and come around. Now, ideally, you'll get a better curve if you make that line in one motion. So don't stop. That'd be terrible. I came off the line. Let's try that again. It's not easy. See if I can do a little better this time. It's a little hard to see the line because of the shadow up here. And I'm just doing sort of a light pass. That's better. Just doing kind of a light pass there. With the wood, a little harder again. So if you stop and start, you end up with sort of little angles in there. Not always, but it is a possibility. And one thing you can do, especially if you're using the wood, is you can sand it afterwards, more so than with the paper. And obviously, it's going to take a lot more passes. So I was thinking you guys would do this first series of planes with the wood. But I'm going to let you use the cardstock if you want. We can save the wood for playing with the laser cutter, but it's up to you. I'll let it be up to you. It's pretty close. So if you're doing something like this, the wood's going to be kind of prohibitive. So here I would take this, and if I had any little angles on there, I could take that and kind of clean that up. So the wood is going to be a little more rigid. So some designs are going to be pretty good. And the cardboard is going to be easier to cut. I said, are you paying attention?
Yeah.
On the phone, your phone a lot. Whereas the cardboard is, it holds pretty well with the CA glue. We're about to take a break. All right, so that's the project. I'm going to give you guys each piece of this cardstock and some knives and some cutters. And you can start kind of cutting. You have your rulers. I have some rulers you're going to have to share if you don't have your ruler yet. And you can start to kind of figure this out. And we'll work the rest of class, which is 10:30 to 1:10. For the rest of the next hour, start to plan this out. All right, if you guys want to take a 10-minute break, do that.